Today's video is going to be on the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. Now, the Fifth Amendment is a little bit long and it's kind of a run-on sentence amendment, so let's just get to it. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on the presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia, when in actual service in time of war or public danger. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. So, the first part of the Fifth Amendment deals with the concept of the grand jury. That if you are accused of a capital or an infamous crime, you have a right to have the prosecution, in this case, the state, has to put evidence before a grand jury to establish that there is sufficient evidence for there to be a trial. The idea is you just can't try someone because you feel like it. This is designed so that the government can't use prosecution as a weapon. And there are many nations in the world that it is used as a weapon still. The concept of a grand jury is foreign to probably about 75% of the world. So in the United States, it's a very good thing to have, and it definitely protects our rights and keeps the government from being overzealous and using its power of prosecution as a weapon against its people. Of course, this doesn't apply to armies, land armies, naval forces, militias in time of war or in public danger. Again, because there's a different standard for military than there is for the general people, even though in a militia in this context is considered a citizen army. But when I was thinking about this portion, when I was reading over the Fifth Amendment, and I always like to compare it to what's happening in the world today, it occurred to me that it's very important that there has to be sufficient evidence for someone to go to trial. In the world right now, there are many stories on various sleazy Hollywood people and sleazy politicians that have abused their power to various subordinates. Generally guys, unfortunately, but hey, that's just the way it is. More guys have been in power in the past. And I'm not here to defend those people. I mean, I think, generally speaking, if they're guilty of crimes, then they should be punished to the full extent of the law. But the problem I do have with it is that an accusation is not the same as a charge, and a charge is not the same as a conviction. I mean, there is a process that has to be done here. If an individual has done something that is abusive or has been harassing, then there are civil methods from which that is to be handled, and the information should be brought out, and they should be punished in whatever way is appropriate. If they've committed criminal actions and they're doing it, then they should be tried in a criminal court, and they should be punished accordingly. And I don't care if you're a senator or a congressman or a sleazy Hollywood producer. Somehow there was an issue that I thought was strange about it, was that Hollywood producers are trying to get sex from young actresses. I mean, it fell into the category of wow, really?
I'm shocked to find that gambling is going on in here.
You're winning, sir.
Oh, thank you very much.
I'm not trying to make too light of this, but I am just pointing out the fact that if someone accused you of something, does that mean that you're immediately guilty? And you need to think about that. Now, whether they're guilty or not, that's for courts to decide. You know, the court of public opinion is fine. You can have an opinion about it. But would you really want your life to be destroyed just because someone has a problem with you? Or, and again, I'm not going to defend these people because most of them, I think, are sleazebags and probably will get what they deserve. But having said that, I believe in justice, and justice is done through courts and through evidence. Okay, Moving on. The next aspect of the Fifth Amendment deals with the concept of double jeopardy, that an individual cannot be tried and put in jeopardy again, life and limb, for another for the same charge twice. It's perfectly logical. The idea that you cannot, if the government can't just keep trying, if they are trying to convict you of something and they don't like the verdict, they just simply try you for something else. Which is why generally when you see in court cases that there are multiple things that people are accused of. I mean, a good example of this that's in the somewhat current event of the world is the Kate Steinle killing in the trial in San Francisco. Now the trial is over. I'm saying killing rather than murder because the defendant in this case was acquitted of all charges. But again, he was up for first-degree murder, second-degree murder, and involuntary manslaughter. Because you can't just, if you try him for one, you can't just bring him back and try him for another and try him for another. You try him and see what, basically, and sometimes a good prosecution will do that, put multiple ones in there so the jury can kind of pick the one that's most appropriate. And what I've read about the evidence in this case, I wasn't surprised that they weren't able to convict him of first-degree murder, because that would have been a premeditated killing situation. And even second-degree murder, I thought might be doubtful. But he was acquitted of involuntary manslaughter. Involuntary manslaughter is if you're drinking and driving and you kill someone, that would be considered involuntary manslaughter. You created an environment that had raised the level of danger so high that someone died because of your actions. And I thought that discharging a firearm in a crowded area in the middle of a city, even if it did ricochet off the ground, sounds to me as the textbook's definition of involuntary manslaughter. But unfortunately, I think in this case, and again, this is just my opinion, I'm not a judge or a lawyer, but I'm of the opinion that I think politics and people's ideologies got tied up here and definitely got in the way of justice. Because I don't think that there's any justice for the Steinle family with the way this court case ended. Okay, next, you cannot be deprived of your life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Good, great. The government does violate this, and I think to its shame, actually. I think the classic example of this would be the IRS. The IRS will decide that an individual owes them money, whether it's accurate or not. And in the process of going through this procedures, they will seize your property, seize your funds, freeze your accounts, and basically make your life into a living hell. This hasn't happened to me personally, but I do know some people that it has happened to. That definitely strikes me as taking away their liberty without due process. And there's some arguments about the way the intelligence community handles its actions, I think, can be made in the same way. But again, the Constitution is the Constitution. It's not supposed to just be played with for its convenience, for the convenience of others, excuse me. And I definitely don't see any compensation. I don't see any proper due process in the IRS just seizing your property because it feels like it, and maybe eventually giving it back once they find out that they're wrong. Okay. Lastly, we're dealing with the idea of land cannot be taken from you. Your property cannot be taken from you by the government without just compensation. Now, a classic example of this would be the border wall that is being considered to be built on the Mexican border with the United States. The wall. Or you want to start a fight, you can just say the wall, and people tend to immediately come to arms on it, no pun intended, on that. But whether you're in favor of the wall or against the wall is not a portion of this video, but the idea that if they do end up building a wall, they're going to have to take public lands from people to build it, and they will have to pay them a just compensation for that land. Now, if you're anti-wall, probably you're saying, oh, the Trump administration is seizing people's property, and oh my God, how horrible and evil, and yada yada yada. And I go, well, how do you think you get freeways, people? How do you think you get national parks? I mean, land is taken by the federal government and by the state governments and the city governments for use all the time, and as long as they have to compensate people justly, the fair market value on what they on the land that they have. Sometimes it's taken for improper reasons, and that's what civil and criminal courts again are for. But generally speaking, that's how land is taken for the public use from individuals, and they're compensated a fair amount for it. One of the purposes I have of doing these videos is I'm talking about an amendment to the Constitution that is over 200 years ago was created, and yet every aspect in it relates in one way or another to things that are happening in the world today. We still have grand juries. You still have to have fair compensation for your land. You still cannot be deprived of your liberty or your property without due process. You still do not have to bear witness against yourself. These are all parts of our society today. So again, 200 years plus after its creation, we're still living in the history of the Constitution. So, having said that, hopefully I've given you some food for thought. I don't want to be too negative about it. I sometimes come across, I'm a little bit skeptical of the government. I'm more of a classical liberal or / moderate conservative, which people think, well, you can't be both. And I go, if you read the definition of classical liberalism and a moderate conservative, they're pretty much on the line with each other. But I'm a man who's also a patriot. I believe in the United States of America. But I do believe the government has to be watched carefully, because governments are elected by people and they're made of people. And people are flawed. People make mistakes. So when you're watching my videos, I'm hoping that I'm provoking the ideas in your mind to think about who you're voting for. Think about what your government's doing. And think about what you're going to need to do about it if it starts abusing its power too much. You need to change the people you're electing. You need to work on improving your governments in your own cities, in your own states, to help keep the federal government in line. Because it can get out of line. And if it does, it's up to the people to do something about it. So, again, food for thought. Hopefully, hopefully that you've enjoyed this video, and if so, please tell me that you've liked it. If you disliked this video, tell me that you disliked it. But either case, if you're going to like it or dislike it, please leave me comments, because I would like to discuss it with you. I will answer every comments that I can, that I find quite happily, actually. And of course, if you want to help keep my videos going, please subscribe to my page. So I'll be putting another video out in a week, though my next one I think is going to be more of a commentary video, historical commentary, rather than trying to deal with the direct facts like the amendments. I'll probably take a week off from the amendments. So look forward in a week. So thank you kindly.